Eshet Chayil Mimsa V'rachok Mimni Mikra Ataka Lebala Shala Lo Yesa Da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya 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 da 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 ya da da ya da da ya da da ya da da. Sheker hachen vehevel hayofi isha yirat Adonai hititalal tnula mipri yadeha vihaluha b'sha'arim ma'aseha. Looks are deceptive, beauty is illusory. It is a woman who lives a life in awe of God and service to others, who should be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands and let her deeds praise her at the gates. Today, Gladys is at the gates of a life well lived, of a beautiful, beautiful life. And we who are here, we who will speak about the beautiful life and loving soul of Gladys Siegel, we will join our words with a chorus of Gladys's many, many acts of kindness and generosity and love that testify for her today and always at the gates. I ask everyone to please turn off your cell phones. And I invite forward Lee Siegel, Earl and Gladys's eldest son, to share some words.
I usually speak without anything written, but my bar mitzvah, I had to have it written down, so it's going that way. But I need a crutch. Excuse me. First, like to say that last time Gladys, my mother, our mother, and I were here, it's a little more than 3 years ago, service with Rabbi Steve, Hagba, and Glila, our happy place. And she really should be sitting over there where she would sit, or over there when we were going that way. So obviously she's with us. She is with us. Dear Mom, throughout your entire life, put others' needs ahead of your own. Today we honor you, thank you, and shine our loving spotlight on your incredible life and journey. She was an East Coast girl. She was a West Coast lady. She was a East Coast Southern belle. Your energy knew no limits, and your determination and dedication to family and community continually raised the bar and standard for community engagement, both Jewish and civic. Growing up, you were our rock and anchor in our childhood home, and the loving partner of Dad. You're a fee. That's kind of the only Yiddish that we knew growing up. Fee. We called each other a fee. I guess it's Hebrew yefeh, yefa. Not sure, never asked. But that was their affectionate greeting for each other. Yours was always a team effort. Your loving devotion to each other and to us, your children, enabled us to live a secure and ever enriched childhood. Your moral compass instilled in us the values of care and mutual respect for all those around us. Our home provided us with an appreciation and respect for our Jewish heritage and the central place the country of Israel has played in all of our lives. Your code of ethics and the unique role model and mentor that you were have now passed through us, your children, to our children, and are continuing to our children's children. Whether as mom, savta, grandma, or Hami, to you all Gladys, your unconditional love, support, and generosity have instilled in our 3 generations the need and the belief that we are here to make the world a better place. Our family for more than 6 decades has been a part of the Bethel family. Over 72. Full disclosure. And we will remain forever grateful for the support and friendship of the Bethel community. This past year has been incredibly difficult for our family. Gladys's friends and the Bethel Support Network helped us shield our mother from the nightmare and atrocities of October 7th. Both Keith and Aviva's being taken hostage to Gaza and the all-encompassing war that has continued for more than a year have been overwhelming. Aviva is back home. But Keith remains a hostage in Gaza. We are thankful that our mother did not have to suffer the pain and suffering of every day that Keith, her youngest child, her baby, has remained a hostage. As our family continues to work every day to bring Keith home, we ask that the Bethel community honor our mother's memory with renewed and urgent efforts to help us bring Keith and the other hostages home. We must continue to believe that with hard work, a better day is coming, as that will always be our mother's legacy. Her memory will be for a blessing for our family and for all those who knew her throughout her exceptional lifetime. Zchona livracha.
We'll now hear from David Siegel. Old school. Firstly, thank you to everyone who's here to honor Mom. Standing room only, looks like. And thank you to Rabbi Greyber for all he's done for and with Mom and for us. As Lee said, Mom was fully committed to us kids, whatever came along. She was ever ready to support us and just consistently be there, no matter the circumstance. Yesterday, Rabbi Greyber asked us, us meaning Lee, Lucy, and myself, to tell stories about Mom, and there was certainly no shortage of stories. In fact, I saw firsthand Rabbi Greyber's graceful skills in moving things along. We were telling stories. And, one of us finally took a breath and he said, anything else I should know? Something like that. It was really sweet. So I just want to share a few memories about Mom. Since we were meeting yesterday and speaking with the rabbi, all kinds of stories have come to mind. But I just want to talk about some that reflect on the perspective of us kids through our growing up years. One thing that stands out from as far back as I can remember, and for our family, there are two phases of growing up. There's the West Coast California phase, and then the East Coast North Carolina phase. And throughout all that, a very consistent thing is that she loved talking and being with people. And much of the time, it was related to things that she felt needed to be done and how to collaborate with others to make those happen. And in that effort, I can remember very little that Mom used the phone a lot. She used it to stay connected to friends. One of her closest friends in California was Rhoda Peckner, and her close one of our close friends here was Beryl Slum, so there were those conversations. But a lot of the conversations were about making things happen. And it was an indispensable tool when she would contact folks. And many of you were probably on the receiving end of being asked by mom to support, that would be donate, to a cause. And it occurred to me that once she had you on the phone, the conversation could go on for a while. The outcome was already known. I mean, the call wasn't going to end with, I don't think that's something I can do this year. There was no way. And I also wonder if some people start to look into how you get your number unlisted so that, they could control a little bit more. But actually, everyone felt good. Because when mom convinced them to join in helping something, it was always something that was meaningful and the right thing to do. It's the phone era. Then email came. I don't think I know anyone who had email earlier, historically speaking, than mom, except for my wife, Susan. Mom had one of the first Mac computers, the one where the screen is a fraction of the size of the whole box. And when she realized, talk about an early adopter, but when she realized the efficiency of email, the phone, you're on the phone, you talk to somebody, you hang up, you make another phone call. Email, you put all kinds of things out there. She quadrupled her productivity, not just in soliciting donations and that kind of thing, but all kinds of connecting and organizing and making things happen. The other thing that I just want to share is some examples of how mom was game for whatever her kids came up with. So I was in the Boy Scouts for a bunch of fundraiser things. One of them, Lucy reminded us yesterday, was we made bird feeders out of pine cones. You're in North Carolina, there are a lot of pine cones, big jumbo pine cones. You mix together peanut butter and some bird seed and you apply it to the little pieces of the pine cone. So mom approached all her friends and there was no saying no. They bought the goofy pine cone bird feeders that David had made, and she was out there hawking those pine cones for me. I like to make and build things, something actually I got from mom through her dad, Julius Concourse, our grandfather. He liked to do things with his hands. So I would come up with all kinds of various projects. One of my favorite things to do was go to the library. The library in Chapel Hill at this time was in an old house downtown. I'd immediately go to the section where there are books about making things. And there's a series of books, the first boys' book of electronics, second boys' book. And one of them, they described a project that you could make. I don't even remember what it was. But in there, it said, if you go to your local phone company, they'll have spare parts that they can give you. So I go to mom and I say, there's a project in the book, I want to make it. And if we go to the phone company, they're just going to give me parts. So I suspect mom knew, I think the book was probably written in Chicago or New York. It was not in Chapel Hill. But nonetheless, she took me. She was my, sort of front person getting in the phone. I was young. She comes in, finds out who we should talk to. I talk to the guy and say, in essence, where are the spare parts? He has no idea what I'm talking about at all. We leave. I find parts somewhere else. Another project in one of these books was you could make an electronic organ. It would have 8 notes, 1 octave. Go to mom. I'd earned some money. So I want to spend my money to make the organ. And at that time, there were no electronic parts stores. There wasn't much in Chapel Hill at that time as far as things you might need to buy.
So I looked into it. There was an electronic parts store in Durham, which for us was kind of, oh man, we're going to Durham, other than Bethel. And yeah, so we truck over to the electronic parts store. I go up to the counter, hey Heath, which I remember was, about this height. I have my list of parts, and Mom's just patiently there while I buy these crazy electronic parts to make the organ. Just a few more things. Mom, this is true for Dad too, love comedy. We had comedy records at home. One time when Mom and Dad were visiting in Rochester, where we live, when Hannah and Marissa, our daughters, were growing up, we went to the movies to see Robin Hood Men in Tights. Mom was a huge Mel Brooks fan. At Robin Hood Men in Tights, from very early in the movie and then throughout, she was laughing so hard she was crying. And Hannah and Marissa saw that. So ever since then in the family, all we have to do is say Robin Hood Men in Tights. We're all thinking the same thing. Mom in tears because she's laughing so hard. Finally, I just want to speak to something that both our parents were involved in, but I think Mom was the moving force. They decided when I was very young, I think 5 or 6, somebody told them about a guitar teacher, so they got me into guitar lessons. It was flamenco guitar. At the time, the instrument was at least as big as I was, probably bigger. The music didn't speak to me. After the first few lessons, I went to Mom and Dad, said, I can't do this. This isn't for me. But what I wanted to do, we were living in California at the time, I wanted to play folk songs, sing, that was all over California at the time. And I'm pretty sure Mom was the one who was the quickest to realize they shouldn't shoehorn me into this crazy flamenco thing, and got me into guitar lessons. A good number of years ago, I sent Mom an email. I was reading about a drummer who used to live around here, who I played with some in a band I was in, and I wrote her an email and thanked her for giving me that gift, because it's still with me, I still play. Hence the instrument over there. We talked about Keith, who we are waiting for Keith to come home and working to try to make that happen. Keith loves music. You name the type of music, he loves it. Live is even better. So I just want to play a couple of short pieces about Keith, who isn't here today to be able to share with us. And also for me to be able to make that musical expression to Mom.
We'll now hear from Lucy Siegel.
As always, my whole life, very difficult to follow my brother Lee and David. Thank you all so much for being here, for loving our mom, for being extraordinary friends. And when my family, Emily, and my deceased husband, Ed, moved to Chapel Hill, I got to know so many of you, and it enriched our lives. Understanding more about my mom, Emily's grandmother, and I am so, so grateful for that. And over the last year and a half, really been able to get to know you, Rabbi, and you've also enriched our lives, and I thank you deeply. As I look around, I know that many of you are longtime friends, people who knew the extraordinary woman our mother was, a friend, a mentor, trailblazer, a volunteer, a leader, a woman who was selfless, kind, profoundly generous with her resources, but also with her time. She was someone who could make us smile and laugh, and such a beautiful smile our mom had. But this morning, I'm going to talk briefly about Gladys Siegel as a mother. She was the best. I know we all say that about our mothers, but to say that my mom was the best. Some of the things that I'm going to say, Lee, David, and I didn't share our comments in advance, so I apologize. I realize a lot of what I'm going to say has already been said by my brothers. But our mom was organized. She was solid, steady, supportive, and interested in each of her children. She made time for each of us individually and in connection with our activities, volunteering to support. David gave a very sweet recollection of the bird feeders, of which I clearly remember. I remember for myself when I was a Girl Scout, every year my mother volunteered to be the cookie coordinator. She collected the orders. She sorted the cookies. Our basement was filled truly from the floor to the ceiling with boxes of cookies. And our downstairs playroom is what we called it. By the end of the cookie drive, that room took on the aroma of mint chocolate chip cookies. Our mom knew how to have a good time. We've talked today a lot about her faith, her generosity, her gifts and donations to others, but she also really liked to have a good time. And she shared that knowledge with us, teaching me, for example, how to knit and sew, how to play cards. Later, she would pass these skills on to her grandchildren. I remember evenings where playing cards or playing Scrabble was the group activity, the games drawing us closer together as a family. She was the mom who all of our friends wanted to be around, maybe to play a hand of cards or just to enjoy her good humor or just share things confidentially. As recently as this past summer, when my friends who don't live local come and visit, one of the first things they ask me, and usually it's in advance, can we go see your mom? And I have a very dear friend who was here just a few months ago, and she was so happy to go and visit with my mom. She had so many gifts. We'll call them talents. She was a great knitter, which many of you know. And she sewed many clothes for herself, but also for me. I can remember when I get my first dress that my mother didn't make. And she also knitted for everyone in her family. She excelled as a cook, putting together Shabbat supper every Friday night. And as many of you know, she always had to have an even number. If it was 9, at the last minute, she'd find somebody to make number 10. Nobody will ever forget our mom's incredible grilled salmon. As a mother, she passed these skills on to her children and her grandchildren. She was always supportive and understanding, even if we ever fell short of her standards or chose not to pursue an interest that was an interest of hers. No matter what path we chose, she was our cheerleader. Graduate from college and go off and live on the other side of the world? Sure, you'll do great. You're ready. Go for it. She showed her children that it was important to live by high standards of generosity, friendship, tolerance, and achievement. And for me, it was tolerance, especially. Tolerance of all faiths, ethnicities, incomes, and education. Tolerance of people from all over the world. Tolerance, even of Duke fans. She welcomed all into her home. She didn't push us to achieve. She led us to achieve through example. To the extent that any of the four of us achieved high standards of generosity, friendship, tolerance, or academic study, it's because she showed us the way through her own life. In that way, she taught me how to be a kind, compassionate, supportive mother, and my brothers how to be fathers in the same way. And then she did it all over again with the next generation, her grandchildren, and even her great-grandchildren. Our job was to be supportive of our children and to lead through positive example. And as a child, and then as an adult, we always had the best example to follow. And Gladys Siegel, our mother. Thank you.
Now hear from Keith's wife, Aviva.
Thank you. And I loved it that he said that I'm Keith's wife, because I've been Keith's wife and only Keith's wife for the last year. So I can't think that there's any better place to talk about Gladys than Bethel. She loved Bethel. Anything that was around or about Bethel, she just smiled and you could see her eyes open. She loved Bethel. And she just looked for a reason to come here and be here. And I remember her being the first woman president. I was just so proud of her. And I'm sure that everybody in this room is so proud of her being part of this community that she loved. And I know that you all loved her. So I'm going to say things that have been said already, but I just have to say them again. I always used to talk to her and ask her, how many people do you have on Friday for supper? And she said, I don't know yet. But it was like at the last minute, another 2 people or 3 people from all over the world, not only from Bethel or from Chapel Hill. People used to come all over. There was somebody, Einat, that came from Croatia, and we introduced Einat to Earl and Gladys, and they just became like her parents here. And she loved them and they loved her, and it was just beautiful. But I'm really here talking about Keith and Gladys, because everybody, Lucy and David and Lee, have said everything else. Keith and Gladys had a very, very special relationship. Both of them used to wake up maybe at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they used to meet in the kitchen. And I want to say that I'm lucky, and my family's lucky, that there was a door that the kitchen could have been closed, because they used to just giggle and giggle and giggle and laugh. And you know, Keith for me is the most funniest person in earth, and Gladys is too. So I don't know who wins, but they both are very, very, very funny, and they just loved each other. Just, you know, it was so special for me to see that, because I made my mom laugh, but not like Keith made Gladys laugh. And I really just loved that. I just loved that so much. And some of the jokes that they used to say, I didn't even understand. It was something between them. And when Keith and I used to go back home, we used to come often with the kids to visit, and we used to go home. And a day before, Keith was just the most saddest person in earth. And he used to come to me and say, I think I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm just going to vanish. I'll be in the car with the suitcases. And Alon, Ilan's husband, Ilan's my daughter and Safta's grandchild, said that she even can remember one of the times that Keith didn't even say goodbye. He just went. But I can't imagine that really happened. But he used to always, that was the moments that he used to cry. So I decided to talk and just to tell you that while we were in Gaza, maybe 2 weeks late after we got there, it was very quiet. We weren't allowed to talk or whisper. But he came up to me and he whispered. And he said, the first thing that I want to do when I get out of here is to go to my mom, to give her a hug. So Gladys, I'm here telling you that to Keith, from Keith, because he would have loved being here. And it's just unfair for him not to be here. So thank you.
We'll hear from Lee's son, Gladys's grandson, Natan.
I'm also the phone type, apparently. So those of you who don't know me, I am Gladys Siegel's roommate. He is definitely a great roommate, a great person to live with. I mean, the rent was super cheap. The food was great. And more often than not, the cleanup was not done by me as well. And I had to say one thing about the emails that David did not mention is all these emails were made with anything between half an inch to an inch long nails. No minor spelling problems, but spell check wasn't that strong back then. Safta, these are my final words to you. I want to start off by saying that, as the great Jerry Seinfeld once said, the number one fear of your average person is speaking in public. And the second one is death. So I guess you went with number 2 fear, and I'm stuck here living out the number 1 fear. Both Jerry and, like Lucy was saying, Mel Brooks, I think me and her connected a lot over their stand-up. The amount of hours that we spent in the car just listening to the stand-up, we were both just you could have muted it and we would have finished all the jokes. So can't even. I kind of said this. I can't even count the amount of times that you and I have listened to Jerry in your car, or as we'd like to call it, the tank. That car was the first self-driving Mercedes, as you could not see who was driving it. You just see knuckles. But nevertheless, no one ever stopped her. So we can tell that to Elon Musk. For me, for someone that I think we really got to connect more in your later stage, living in Israel. I did get to spend over 10 years living really close to you, and you have always concreted everything that everyone knows about you, and you've all heard today. You managed to see many of your great grandchildren, including mine, a feat that many people are not really able to say that, which further shows your will and commitment to see your family grow and thrive. You have indeed lived a full and fulfilling life, yet here we are, and I honestly don't blame you. I mean, another 4 years of that orange president. You find your way out, and that is okay. I would like to end with some minor plagiarism from Rabbi Steve back in Kibbutz Gezer, as he was talking about my grandfather, my mom's father, and his funeral. I believe that the soul lives on in our memories. As long as we think of Savta, as long as we remember her and continue to do the good deeds that she did. And side note, I don't know if you guys know about the 50 years of Meals on Wheels that she did. And I think if you just put that and you say, well, she did 50 years of Meals on Wheels, I mean, I don't think she needed to do more than that. So good luck trying to surpass that one. Savta Gladys remains an internal part of which we, in turn, pass to our children and grandchildren for future generations and great-grandchildren of hers. This is what I have adopted to believe about Judaism when it speaks of the immortality of the soul. The memory of our loved ones continue to inspire us, and with those memory kept alive and the recollection of beautiful years together, Savta Gladys will be kept alive in the hearts of all who knew her, and to that extent, all that have heard of her and her actions told by her loved ones. And I think that really amplifies on Tzedakah Tatzil Mimavet that Rabbi Greyber was telling us earlier, and really Savta's generosity will maybe physically ended on Sunday, but through her tzedakah will be remembered not only in the Jewish community, but in the Triangle community for many years to come.
Some emails from 2020, the first part of the pandemic, June 9th. Dear Bethel friends, Shabbat Shalom. I received my beautiful Shabbat gift, and thank you very much. I look forward to enjoying the challah and babka, and most of all, the thoughtfulness of sending these gifts. I've been sending emails to many Bethel members wishing them Shabbat Shalom and many other wishes. I feel so happy that Bethel is on the forefront of doing mitzvot to so many friends. I send hugs to all. Gladys. August 7th. Dear Rabbi and Jennifer, what a treat for me to see your faces and wishing you Shabbat Shalom. My new great-grandson's name is Yitzchak, named for his grandfather Earl. I feel so blessed to have family, children, and grandchildren, and I am blessed to have you both in my life. I love you. Many hugs. Gladys. Dear Rabbi Greyber, August 29th. I haven't written you in a while, and I apologize. I hope you and your beautiful family are well and surviving the world events we are coping with. I am fine physically and eager for a return to Shabbat services at Bethel. I miss seeing you in the congregation in our beautiful building. Enjoy Shabbat, stay safe, and be well. I love you, Rabbi Greyber. Hugs. September 9th. Dear Rabbi Greyber, your face is so handsome on the weekly. on the weekly announcements. Many hugs. Gladys. I have hundreds. I've been very afraid of this moment for many years. Afraid because how would I find the words to sufficiently praise a woman who'd given so much to so many? To laud a true matriarch of our community. Afraid because I loved Gladys very much and will miss her and knowing that she is in the world. It is fitting that Gladys died in winter, in the darkest time of the year, even as she couldn't email or come to synagogue anymore over the past few years. Just being in her presence, just knowing that she was there was a constant source of light for me in a world that has felt very dark at times. It is also fitting that Gladys died on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the day on which we make the transition from Mar Cheshvan, the bitterness of Cheshvan, to a countdown to Hanukkah and a festival of light. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel famously debate how to light the candles. Shammai is right. If the candles commemorate the oil, there was less and less oil each day, so we should light fewer and fewer candles each night, going from 8 to 1. Shammai is right, but Hillel wins. Because of what the Talmud calls ma'alin b'kodesh. Hillel intuits something Gladys knew about the world and about light and life, that when there is darkness, ma'alin b'kodesh, we go up. We raise holiness. Whether it was distributing Girl Scout cookie orders or delivering Meals on Wheels for 50 years until she was 91 years old, Gladys was Ma'ala B'Kodesh. She went up in holiness. And when she delivered meals to those in need, she didn't just drop off the food. She visited with each client to make sure that they didn't just have food, but they felt a little bit less alone. Gladys was such a good first female president of the Bethel Synagogue that we had to change the Constitution so she could serve a second term. Where's Kevin Ginsburg? Yes, okay. Yeah. She stayed on to oversee the centennial of Bethel in 1987. She was president of the Jewish Federation. And among many things, she and Earl established the Young Leadership Award. But if there was one theme in Gladys's mitzvah work, it was fighting hunger. She hated the fact that in this country of so much wealth and blessing, that there are people without enough to eat. Until 2020, she was the lead, or one of the lead fundraisers for the Chapel Hill Crop Walk. She was a weekly contributor to the Porch program in Chapel Hill. And during Earl's distinguished career at UNC, Gladys always thought of his students, many of whom came from Africa and Asia and the Caribbean, as her own kids. And she prepared and served meals for as many as 50 people in their home, many of whom remain in touch with Gladys, remembering her generosity and love. And I was told that, by the way, lasagnas are a very good dish to serve if you want to serve 50 people in your house. Gladys believed that home-cooked meals are something that everyone deserves. She was a knitter. She knitted her own suits, dresses, coats, and sweaters for herself and her family. She started Bethel's knitting group that proudly met when I first started. I found this out. I went into my study on Sunday morning after Minyan and saw the knitting chavre. And they welcomed me to my study. And she was a member of multiple knitting groups that provided hats and blankets to newborns in the area hospitals. And did I mention that Gladys loved North Carolina and the Tar Heels? Yes, she and Earl established the Earl and Gladys Siegel Student Support Scholarship within the Department of Maternal and Child Health in the UNC School of Public Health. And yes, she was a member of the UNC Chancellor's Club and a longtime patron and sustaining patron of UNC TV. And yes, she worked along with Earl and with then Governor Hunt to create North Carolina's partnership with Israel. And yes, in 2020, Governor Roy Cooper recognized Gladys's long life of commitment to the people of North Carolina by installing her as a member of the Order of the Longleaf Pine, the state's highest civilian honor. But can we talk about her fingernails? Impeccable, and as we like to say, Cajol Carolinite. Carolina blue. In our old sanctuary, Gladys would sit right about there next to Hal, near Earl's name on the memorial board. When we said a prayer for people who were ill, Gladys would always stand with a list of people who she was praying for. And when there was an injured Tar Heel basketball player, or when Roy Williams was having knee surgery, she would proudly and loudly include their names, combining Gladys's two religious life commitments, Judaism and Carolina basketball. After I heard Sunday morning that Gladys had died, I listened to an interview that Lucy's husband, Paul, conducted on May 22nd, 2017 for Gladys's 90th birthday. At the end, Paul said there was one last question that Gladys's youngest son, Keith, had sent and that he wanted him to ask. What message do you want to pass on to your great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren who might listen to this recording one day? She took a moment and said to think about other people, not just yourself. To be generous with other people. I think I was afraid of this day for so long, not because of what I would say. Gladys gave me the gift of believing in myself, of knowing I could somehow find the right words for this moment. But Gladys's death represents for me a huge unanswered or yet to be answered question. Who will our community be without Gladys? Who will be our Gladys now? Who will send dozens of emails of love on Friday afternoons that tell so many people, you are loved, you matter? Who will have a list of people to call and check on them and just tell them, I care about you? Who will make home-cooked meals and show up to shivas and unveilings, whether or not you know the person, but because it's the right thing to do? who will tell our community, yes, tell our community, you need to give. To Bethel, to Jewish for Good, to Meals on Wheels. Who will be the person to whom you just can't say no, because you don't say no to Gladys because you knew that if you said no to Gladys, it wasn't just saying no to her, it was saying no to your best self. It was saying no to community. It was saying no to the chance to do something right and to be your best self in the world and to contribute to something eternal. That's what Gladys was offering you, like the mob offers you a choice. These are the questions that Gladys's death poses to each and every one of us. To our community, she was our matriarch. And it is up to us to carry forward that which she cannot carry for us anymore. I remember celebrating Hanukkah in Israel many years ago, just before Jennifer and I met on a trip to the desert in the south of Israel. After the sun had gone down, the desert winds started to pick up, and we brought a tin Chanukiah with us to a rock wall in the desert, an overhang, and we huddled together to light the Hanukkah candles. And our job in that moment, the group of us, was to guard the flame, to keep it alive against the darkness and the swirling winds. That is the image that comes to mind when I think about the last 14 months of Gladys's life. Lucy, you were simply a hero. Protecting your mom, keeping her from heartbreak, and helping her to live out the last days of her life with chocolate in her mouth and peace in her heart. You protected our light, our hope, our holiness, and it is a gift for which we can never repay you. Rabbis have pointed out that if the miracle of Hanukkah was that the candle lasted longer than it should have, we should only light candles for 7 days, not 8, because the first day the oil was just burning as long as it should have. But they explained that the miracle on the first day was not that the oil lasted longer than it should, but that we had the courage to light the candle at all, not knowing what the future would bring. I don't know what a world looks like without my dear Gladys. I don't know what the future holds for Keith, for this precious family, for Israel, for our community. I don't know, and if I'm honest, it's pretty scary right now to try and imagine where the light is going to come from. But Gladys taught us, Ma'alin b'kodesh. We go up in holiness. We have to have the courage to light the candles ourselves, to bring more light into the world, to call and send emails of loving kindness and connection, to march for hunger and bring and make home-cooked meals, to send hugs and hugs and more hugs. Now that Gladys's light has gone out. Gladys Siegel Tova Bat Yaakov Elifsha died on Sunday morning, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, corresponding to December 1st, 2024. May her memory be for a blessing. And we say Amen. In a moment, we are going to conclude our service with two prayers. First, a prayer for the hostages, including Gladys's son, Lee, and David, and Lucy's brother, Aviva's husband, Keith, after which we will conclude the service with El Male Rachamim, the memorial prayer. Last week, I visited Gladys and said the vidui for her, a prayer which we say, or that is said on our deathbed. And in the liturgy of that prayer, we ask God to care for, actually the words of the liturgy are, Hagen ba'ad kroveha asher nafsham kishuram benafsham. We actually ask God to defend our loved ones, relatives whose souls are bound up with theirs. And normally when I say this prayer, I'm thinking about how a person's relatives, the one who is dying, that their relatives will be sad, and that we're asking God to comfort them, to guide them through their sadness and give them strength to recover from the death of the one who they loved. But this time I didn't only think about that sadness. Thought about how I was praying that somehow God would protect Gladys' son, who today is spending his 424th day. In a living hell. That he should be brought forth from literal darkness, from a literal place of constriction and narrowness. It is for all this and more that we pray now for Keith and all of the hostages who have been suffering for too long. Please rise. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. V'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rechav Eliyahu Yivarech v'yishmor v'yintzor tashivuim. Kutiel Shmuel Ben Tova Yitzchak. B'toch sha'ar achenu Beit Yisrael hanituyim b'tzara u'v'shivya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem, we pray that the one who is the source of all blessing and light and goodness and compassion will pour down compassion upon them where they are and bring them from darkness in the valley of the shadow of death. Break their bonds and speedily return them to the loving embrace of their families. May the verse be fulfilled in them. Sason v'simcha yasigu v'nasu yagon v'anacha. that they may obtain joy and gladness, and that sorrow and groaning shall flee away. And we say, Amen. אלמלא רחמים שוכן ברמים. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מסינים את נשמת טובה בת יעקב אליפשה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא ברחמים הסתירה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. בצור בצור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה. ותנוח בשלום המשכבה, ונאמר Amen. Our God, who is the source of all love and compassion, we ask you to remember with love and compassion the soul of our dear Gladys. And because Gladys dwells in the eternity that is within each of us and among all of us, we know and pray and hope that she will continue to dwell in the eternity that is beyond us as well. And we say, Amen. I'm going to ask the pallbearers who are escorting the casket to the hearse to please come forward. After the family leaves the sanctuary, we ask people to go to their cars and to join the procession to the cemetery. There will be Shiva this week at the home of Lucy and Paul Siegel, 135 Cofield Circle in Durham. The home will be open for visitors from 10 a.m. to noon and 2 to 4 p.m. on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And services will take place at 7 p.m. on Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. Pallbearers, please come forward.